Welcome to Audience of One, a podcast produced by Kew Baptist Church. Our hope is that the stories and testimonies shared by a range of Christian leaders will inspire and encourage you to live for an audience of one in every season of life. As a church podcast, we don't condone lying, even though Regan does refer to himself as the current church administrator in the first episode. These stories have been recorded over several years, and some roles or details may have since changed. This is Audience of One.
Welcome to an Audience of One podcast. This is a new podcast that was started through the Kew Baptist Church, but hopefully we've got listeners from a variety of different areas. My name is Regan Smith and I am the administrator at Kew Baptist Church, and joining me as a host for the season is Senior Pastor Mark Edwards. How are you going, Mark?
I'm doing great. It's great to be here, Regan, and good to be part of this. It's the start of what could be a great journey, and hello to everyone that's listening, whether they're from Kew Baps or from someplace in Australia or international or perhaps even beyond the world. Who knows, Regan? Who knows where we're going?
Yep. And to start us off, we've got a guest. She's very well known around the community. Current res manager. Her name is Michelle Younger. Michelle, how are you?
I'm very, very well, Reggie. Thanks for having me on the podcast. It's an honour to be here for your first session.
First session. We're very excited to have you on. How have you been? And tell us a little bit about yourself. You're currently the res manager and have been for a couple of years now.
Yep.
You're a mum of 2 kids as well.
Correct.
How's that been going this year? Sounds like a busy time.
It has been a busy time, Reggie. I've got 2 kids who are 2 and 1, so they take up 99% of my time and energy. But also, living at res, working at res, that's Kew Student Residence. My husband and I run a uni student residence for kids aged or students aged, anywhere from 18 to about 23. And that's really busy as well. So life is jam-packed, but it's really good. It's really fun. It's a privilege to share my life with the students there at Kew Student Residence. We've got a great community, great staff. And in terms of mum life, it's busy, but it's getting more and more fun. Last year, as Reggie knows, was a pretty full-on year. Having a newborn and a 1.5-year-old, I was outside my comfort zone, man, in a big way. But this year it seems to be getting easier, which is nice.
Nice. Was being manager of the Kew Student Residence, is that something you've always wanted to do, or has it only come up recently, or how did that opportunity present itself?
Good question, Reg. Wasn't my dream? No, it wasn't my dream. My husband worked for Kew Student Residence when he was in his mid to late 20s. And he always said to me when we first got married, I didn't really have a relationship with the res. He said to me when we were first married, if that manager job ever comes up, I would go for it. And I thought, man, that's not my idea of a good time. I'm an introvert. I don't like lots of people in my space, that sort of thing. And I remember having had my daughter and leaving my job as a physio. So before I was res manager, I was working as a physio and manager at a company down in Geelong, and I had this feeling like, you're not going back to this job. I could just tell, even though my patients were saying, oh, you're coming back, we really want you to come back, Michelle. And I was saying, yeah, I'm coming back, but something inside me was like, you're not going back to that job. And then Graham got a phone call from the previous manager to say, hey, we're thinking about leaving, and I heard you're interested. Something for you to start praying about. And as soon as Graham got off the phone, I remember being in the lounge room and I was holding my daughter, who was just a little baby then, and he said, the managers are leaving. And I just knew straight away. I thought, yep, that's what we're doing. It wasn't a feeling of joy, but it was a feeling of knowing and of peace. Like that's where you're going, and it's time to start preparing. So, yeah.
Can I just ask Michelle that, because I think it's really interesting from like a general point of view. Did Graham say that before you were married or after you were married?
That is a very good question. He actually said it before. So when I first met Graham, he was working on staff here at Res, and he absolutely loves it. He lived and breathed Res, and he did say even then, you know, that manager job looks really, really good. It's something that I've always known that he'd wanted to do.
So just in terms of like expectations, you know, like a young couple thinking about taking the big plunge, was there a sense in you, well, this is something that might happen even before you were married? Were you preparing yourself for like a ministry role even before you were married?
No, definitely not.
Right.
So I became a Christian 2 years before I got married. Did I think that I would ever land myself in a ministry role? No, never. I was still trying to figure out who God was and what was my relationship with him, which, you know, is a lifetime struggle. But no, I never thought I'd land in ministry. Probably by the time I had my daughter, the idea was not so foreign to me. I knew that God was probably calling us into more explicitly work with him. So it wasn't so... it wasn't such a big leap at that point, but definitely not when we were dating. When he first mentioned it to me, we both probably laughed it off, not really expecting it would ever happen.
And good news for the students at the Student Res is that they get free physio now from one of the managers, which is great. And yeah, you've been on part of the manager role is you're on the ministry team, so it's been great to I suppose work as a team, all three of us actually. And obviously it means we get to know your kids pretty well.
Too well, Reggie.
Too well, Billy and Annabelle. One of my memories from this year was when Annabelle walked in and she said, Reggie looks really pretty, Reggie looks really pretty. And I didn't know what she was talking about. And I walk out and someone else on the ministry team had made a poster and for whatever reason had photoshopped my head on your body. Thanks, Annabelle.
She knows when something's good looking, Reg.
Yeah. So I suppose just to go back to the start of your journey, what was it like growing up? Like, what was it like being your family and what was your experience growing up?
Yeah, as some of you might know, I didn't grow up in a Christian family. My parents both came from Catholic families, and I suppose they were a bit turned off by that experience, to be honest. I mean, they'd have to say it in their own words, but both grandparents were quite strict in terms of following, you know, Catholic traditions and things like that, and they had both then decided by the time they had kids that wasn't something they were going to carry on into their lives. So no talk of sort of God at home. We did go to church Christmas when my grandparents were still alive, and maybe Easter when my grandparents were still alive, and then once they passed away that kind of stopped as well. So yeah, I had a brother and a sister, both considerably older than me, grew up in Geelong, in a suburb called Highton, and went to Catholic schooling. But even then, probably never actually considered that God might be real. It's amazing how much, I obviously went to church twice a year and had Catholic schooling, but never really heard that Jesus might be real. It never really came into my consciousness that this is something that I should consider. And even, the way that we're a family, have great values. My parents very kind and supportive. They did a good job raising us kids, but never really. Those values were kind of standalone. They weren't for God, or there was no. There's no echo of him in our conversations.
Do you think because Kew Student Residence is open to people from all backgrounds, all church backgrounds, Christian families, non-church families, and you've become a Christian relatively late in life compared to perhaps some of them, but some of them don't come from Christian families at all. How does that help you?
I think it helps me a lot to maybe understand where they're coming from and what they're seeing. When I first kind of came into a church environment, a Christian environment, I was deeply uncomfortable. It was a bit of culture shock. The way people talk, what they do, it's very, very different. So I can certainly see in some instances where these students are coming into our res and even something as simple as saying grace, that would make me uncomfortable if I was coming into this environment. I wasn't from a Christian background, or what do you say? I would probably panic that I didn't know the words or things like that I question now in terms of our res. How do we make this place where everyone can belong, where we keep our Christian values, but that people don't feel exposed or intimidated, and they feel like they can belong in the environment, even though we're deeply entrenched in those Christian values as well.
That's so interesting, like the culture. There's cultural parts of church which, if we analyse them, there's nothing to do with Christianity.
Absolutely.
It's culture.
Yeah.
And Christianity is something different altogether, isn't it?
Yeah.
And that's something you observe sort of coming in. You're saying, well, why are you doing this? Why is this part of your faith? Is that your experience? Is that what you would say?
Yeah, I actually think I think my strengths are more towards people that have grown up in a Christian home and detangling tradition and culture away from their relationship with Jesus. I think that's actually more probably the viewpoint that I feel like I can add some benefit, is seeing these young people coming in from a family of being told this is the way to think and this is what a relationship with God looks like by going to church, and then actually helping them to find a relationship on their own and what really matters in this relationship, rather than the culture that you've grown up in.
And that's the experience of so many young Christians, isn't it? The first time away from home, they're exploring their faith. They're working out, is this actually real for me? And you're helping them in that process.
Yeah.
How did you, at what point did you start being interested in church or start going to church? Is there any story behind that?
Yeah. So I was studying physio at the time, and I actually failed a subject, which was heartbreaking for me. I did really well in school, usually got very high marks, and I failed a subject in physio second year, and it was called anatomy, and it was the worst subject, and I failed by 1 point. And my mum, she's a professor, and she was like, no, you're not failing this subject. I remember her marching me up to the dean's office and saying, you need to give her a resit. She only failed by 1%. And he said no. She was fuming, but in the end it led me to Christ, so it's not a bad thing.
How old were you at that point, Michelle?
21,
21. So your mum thought it was good at age 21?
Oh, absolutely.
Okay. Yeah, good.
Yeah, of course.
Hey, Michelle's mum, if you're listening.
She had good intentions, but didn't work out in the end. But anyway, I got put in the class below to complete this subject, and every single class I got paired with the same girl, and it was random allotment of like pair up, physios practicing doing whatever. You got paired basically in every class, and every class I get paired with the same girl, and we became really good friends. And maybe 6 months into our friendship, she told me that she was a Christian. And I thought, man, I wish you had told me that before. I would have definitely censored some of the stories that I told you. I would not have shared a lot of things that I have, but that's okay. And in the end, she had, I don't think she'll mind me saying, she had a crush on a guy that she was playing mixed netty with, went to Kew Baptist Church. She was going to Kew Baptist Church.
It happens.
It happens. And she wasn't sure how to play netball, but she knew that I did. So she said, hey, can you come along to mixed netball? So she would try to make conversation with this guy, and I played netball. And so I did that, met a few lovely people. One of the first people I met actually was my now husband, who was running the mixed netball competition. But stayed playing there for a season, got to know people at mixed netball, became really good friends with this girl from physio, and she just kept inviting me to places. We developed a really good friendship, and she was like, come and hang out with my friends, come and see this, come and do that. And I probably also had developed, if I'm going to be completely honest on the podcast, I probably developed a bit of a crush on my now husband too. So I thought, yeah, I'll come along. Is Graham going to be there?
Some good netball skills, I'm sure.
Yeah, not quite, but still.
Hard not to have a crush on Graham, isn't it?
But anyway, so 1 week randomly found myself in a pew at Kew Baptist Church. And I really thought, what am I doing here? I felt deeply uncomfortable. I sat through the service thinking, what's going on? This is just so bizarre. But I suppose it didn't turn me off enough to stop hanging out with those people. I probably didn't go back to church for a little while, but the pastor at the time had noticed that I was in the crowd. I was new, and he approached my friend and said, will you come and do, Alpha? He called it something else at the time with me. He was an ex-chef, and he said, I'll cook dinner on a Wednesday night if she comes along to this course. And I was really against it, but my friend said, hey, you've been eating muesli for dinner for a while now. Let's go. Let's have a good feed, and I'll come with you, and we'll just sit through it, and we'll have a good meal. And I thought, okay, if you're going to sit with me, then I'll do it. And at the end of the Alpha course, I had probably got to the stage where I thought, there's something so different about this community, and it really struck out to me. And I thought, I want what they've got. And I want to believe what you're telling me, but I didn't know how.
Wow.
Because it's, it's ludicrous. If you come from a non-Christian background, it's like, how am I ever going to make myself believe this?
Everyone's singing about the blood of Christ.
Yeah, exactly.
What is going on?
It's so foreign, but I wanted to. And at the end, the pastor shared his testimony with us, which is, I think probably the most powerful point of the whole course. And he had mentioned that when he became a Christian, that he had, said this prayer about asking God to be Lord of his life. And I actually went home that night, back to my parents' house, and I thought, I'll give it a shot. So I knelt down in my bedroom and I said, I don't know, God, do you want to be Lord of my life? Not anticipating anything, not anticipating an answer. And much to my shock, had, what you would probably call in Christian terms an experience with the Holy Spirit, where I don't know how you describe these things because they're supernatural. It's hard to put them to words, but, on my knees, felt like a great wind had entered my bedroom and went in through my mouth and landed somewhere deep in my chest, to the point where I kind of fell forward and just started sobbing, thinking something just answered me and said yes. And I remember feeling in that moment, which is so bizarre, I remember feeling really forgiven, but I didn't know what for. And I basically cried the next 24 hours. I went to work, had the biggest smile on my face, but I didn't tell anyone what happened. And it took me months to actually say to anyone what happened, because I was a bit ashamed I just didn't know what that was. I told my friend in the end, who was studying physio, and she was like, Michelle, that's actually really special. So yeah, that's how I first came to know God. And from that moment on, I think my faith just kind of exploded.
That's an incredible story. It's not that uncommon, but to hear it from you is quite extraordinary. Thank you for telling us that.
Oh, it's my pleasure.
When you obviously started this relationship with God, I think we've talked about this before, but did you start feeling like really convicted about things? And I don't know, was there sort of stuff like that going on?
Yeah, this is one of my first memories. So I hope my mum never listens to this, but she knows. I would do things before I was a Christian, like I'd go into my mum's wardrobe and take her clothes out and wear them, and then maybe or maybe not put them back. Or I would, if there was a couple of coins on the counter, I'd take those coins. Like they're my dad's change. He won't mind. I'll go and use them, buy some chocolate, whatever it might be. And I remember one of the first things that after I became a Christian, was like having a hyper conscience, and it was the worst. I remember being in my mum's closet, looking at her clothes, being like, I really want to wear that today, but I just couldn't do it. Something in me was like, that's not right. You cannot do that. And it was there so it was so powerful. Like in so many situations I would feel that way. And I even remember have played a lot of netball, and going into the footy netball club and seeing, you know, the culture there is that you have drinks after your game, you have a big night out, that sort of thing. And I just remember standing there and watching. It was like I was having an out-of-body experience, watching my friends all have a drink with the purpose of like having too much and things like that, and thinking, I just can't do this anymore.
What was that like, interacting with people that knew you before, all this happened? Like, was it a shock to them, or, you know, did they notice immediately? And I don't know, did it change the dynamic of some friendships?
Yeah, it did. At the start, I probably really tried to hide it and not communicate with my friends what had happened. I was probably a bit ashamed or embarrassed about the things that I was going through. Because too, I think growing up, Christianity was not popular, still not popular. So I was pretty worried to tell my friends and family what was happening. And when I did tell them, they were worried. So yeah, I probably tried to shield them from it a little bit. And then as time probably progressed, I lost a lot of friends. Whether it was me deciding actually, you know, and this is something that I didn't do well, but I sort of distanced myself because I knew I couldn't do the things that I would normally do. I didn't have the courage to kind of say, actually, I can't do that anymore for this reason. I would just kind of not go, or not, not hang out with those people anymore. Or with, say, my best friend, who I actually did communicate what happened. It did unravel our friendship, and ended up kind of, losing friends over a period of time, which was really painful. And even now, I think hanging out with, God is really amazing, because He has brought some of those friends back into my life, but in a really new way, where I get to be who I am. And they know that, even my best friend, we've reconnected, and she knows that I'm a Christian. She knows what I do, and she knows where the boundaries are. But it's still, I can tell with people that I meet that knew me before, they have this look. They have this look like when they ask me a question or they're talking to me, and I can see them anticipating the Michelle that they knew to answer. And it's really hard for me, and it's a choice whether I answer in the way that I would have, or if I answer as how I am now. And actually, we went to the MCG on Monday to see Geelong v Hawks, and I went with my best friend, and we caught up with people randomly that I hadn't seen in about 7 or 8 years. And I saw them, and I was quite shocked, and I just reverted back to the way that I used to be, and the way that I would banter and the conversations that we would have. And as we walked away from those people, my best friend, who's not a Christian, said, I haven't seen you like that in so long. That is like switching on my favourite TV channel, my favourite channel of Michelle. And I was like, At once I was like, I'm glad that you haven't seen it in a while, because it's not who I am. And I walked away from that conversation feeling a little bit like, yuck, what was that? That just happened so quick, and I've kind of, I'm not that person anymore. But for her, it's someone that she really loved. Yeah,
it's so tough as well. Like, it's so attractive or addictive to actually act how other people want you to as well.
Right,
and like, especially being one of your best friends growing up, that is very tough to sort of come away and be like, I'm getting this praise for acting this certain way, but I shouldn't do that. So, and it's, I suppose, credit to you that you've actually been able to recognise that. And I suppose it's like, well, who do I want to put first? Am I acting this way for God, or am I acting this way for people, I suppose?
Yeah.
But I do want to say, you don't change who you are as well. You have a great sense of humour. Parts of you, there must have been an untangling of working out or which parts of me do I want to discard, but actually who in essence am I? I mean, that's who you are. That doesn't change. Michelle, the sharp-witted person, doesn't change, does it?
No, it doesn't. And that's why we're still friends, I think, too, you know, because I am who I am, but there's definitely been a transformation there. You know, I would make jokes at other people's expense. I would do things that weren't very nice. And I also, I am and was more so a chameleon. I would do what other people wanted me to, and even kind of being faced with those friends from the past, you know, they wanted to laugh, and so I would be the jester. Do you know what I mean? Whereas I'm not that person anymore. God has at least given me a foundation. I'm Michelle night and day. I'm not going to change for someone else's expectation of me. Yeah.
That's wonderful and also tough. We've heard that. Losing friends that's not your intention. You didn't want to lose friends.
No, that's right. Yeah, I've always been surprised with the collateral damage that God will allow in the process of him helping you to realize who he is. You know, he does allow collateral damage, and it is worth it, but it is hard to kind of live through that as well.
That's the moment for the podcast. That's the line right there, Michelle.
There's our promo.
There's our promo. That's great, Michelle.
Would you say that since that encounter that you had, does that happen all the time now? Every night? Do you just hang out with God like that? Or
the wind comes through the windows and shakes the blinds?
Oh, every night, Reggie, you would not believe. No, it doesn't happen every night, but I will say it does happen. It does happen. God speaks to me in lots of different ways, and sometimes it's quiet, and sometimes it's a thought, and sometimes it's through scripture, but I have had more experiences like that, and I do anticipate them. I expect them again. God does speak to me in that way of physically sometimes feeling his presence and giving me words and visions and a sense of his presence very, very intimately. That has happened again. Yeah, it's not something that was one time and it's gone. It hasn't happened the same way. The powerful wind hasn't happened, but I do encounter God. Yeah.
Yeah, awesome. So after all these events, what happened next? Did you end up marrying that attractive netballer that you met back in the day, or?
I did, Reggie. Yes. Yeah, I mean, I did. I got married to Graham, which was obviously a joy. Worked out really well for me, and had 2 kids. I will say, if we're talking about what happened with my relationship with God after that, and the way that my life kind of ended up, I had expectations when I became a Christian. I really thought, man, this is so good. Blessings will just rain down on me. You know, who can stop me now? God's on my side. Everything will happen the way that I wanted to. And quickly learned that wasn't the way that God works. And if I'm going to be completely honest, my life has been a lot more painful and experienced a lot more suffering than I was anticipating when I first became a Christian. And sort of happens in cycles of pain and searching, and me clinging to God, and then him sort of rescuing me, transforming me, lifting me out of the pit, and kind of living in that for a little while before a next cycle of pain and suffering. Like, to be honest, of the last kind of 6 years, they've been hard. They have been hard, and they've been beautiful. But I think in the middle of it is this growing, constant relationship with Jesus that is, it's better than life. You know, it's been the most beautiful thing in the midst of ups and downs of circumstances in the world, is just this relationship with Jesus that is so, so good, and learning more about who he is and who I am in light of him. I think I've now learnt it's not that God is not on my side, I'm on his side. And that's actually infinitely better than the other way around.
There's a whole not my will but yours be done.
Yeah, and that's scary. It's more scary. The battle's much harder than I thought it would be, but it's a lot better as well, you know.
And then, so you married Graham, and then, as we talked about before, you decided to become the managers of the student res. What's it like, working that area now with the young adults, and I suppose, how do you see God working in that environment?
Yeah, it's quite foreign to me. You know, the students have often come from quite conservative backgrounds, and I think there was a little bit of imposter syndrome with myself coming into that environment of, I actually don't know, maybe I don't know as much as they do, or maybe God is different to me than he is to them. And so I felt, especially the first couple of years, or first 12 months especially, what am I doing here? You know, how am I supposed to help? Because I felt kind of inferior to the students who had known so much of the Bible and been to church every week and done things that I just hadn't done. You know, but God is so personal, and I think he's taught me, well, unexpectedly taught me, because, you know, I had my son, you know, 10 months after I got the manager job. Like, he knows how to throw a spanner in the works. But he has shown me that, you know, I've got gifts in terms of being able to speak encouragement and speak his truth into people's lives. And so does my husband, and so do our staff. And it's not so much as an active service, it's also just watching him work in these students and seeing how different they are from my res experience in a non-Christian environment. You know, these students have something, and it's really beautiful. And it's a privilege to kind of sit back and see God at work in them, and probably encourage them in the right way, encourage them to find Jesus as he is in their own lives. You know, it's not about me, it's about him and what he's doing, and calling Jesus out in these students as well. It's amazing. The culture is amazing. For young students, it's incredible. It's so uplifting. They pray for each other, and there's a lot of love that goes on in the res, but there's also a lot of things that everyone goes to. It's hard to live with 50 other people. It's hard to live in close quarters with each other. There's lots of, arguments and people coming from different opinions, even though we are all Christians. And that's what I'm still trying to figure out. How do we live in unity when we do have this whole bag of expectations for ourselves and other people?
Good news is you've only got 8 years to go of the manager role. I suppose a question that we're going to ask most guests when they come on is, what has God been revealing to you today, and going forward, I suppose, because the story doesn't stop. Like, you've had, you know, it's an awesome story and journey till now, but obviously God doesn't stop working now.
That's right.
I suppose, what has he been working through you at the moment?
Yeah, I always think it's interesting in Christian circles how everyone's so interested to hear the testimony of, like, when you met God. But everyone, like, what happens after that is so much more interesting than just the point where you meet him. Surely there's a testimony afterwards. And God's taught me so much in the last 7 or 8 years. But probably what he's talking to me now about is still the same thing as he was teaching me early on, and that is about who I am through his eyes. And I think growing up, you know, I had this idea of love being something that you earn, especially with my parents. I always got the sense of, like, if I am approved of, then I'm loved. And at the moment, he is talking to me about, it's not about what I do. It's about who I am in him. Like, he's placed a value on me that actually doesn't matter if I completely screw up this podcast or I, you know, make mistakes, which I do, and plenty of, that he loves me. And I also am learning more and more who I am authentically without unknowingly kind of putting on the yoke of my husband and my kids and the approval of my ministry team and all those sorts of things. I'm still figuring that out.
There's a reason why, like even as parents, like I'm a parent, you're a parent, you love your children. It doesn't it's not that it doesn't matter what they do, but your love for them is unquestioned. So there's a reason why God's called our Father. It's so interesting to hear that as something God is teaching you this week or, the last couple of weeks. I'm so interested in that. I want to know what God is saying today. It was so interesting hearing your story of 7 or 8 years ago, but that's not the story today, is it?
No.
And just apologies to anyone listening that can hear the ballet music going on above us. Super distracting. Did you have sort of anything else you wanted to touch on before we wrap up, Michelle?
No, not really. I just want to say thanks for having me. I don't think, my story is really one about what Jesus has done in my life. It's, all glory to him. Do you know what I mean? This isn't actually my story. It's his story in me. I just want to highlight that anything that you've heard that you think, oh, that's amazing, or even, encountering God, that's God, We all have the ability to do that, the opportunity to press in and to cling to him through hard times. And, he's so worth knowing. So just an encouragement to kind of lean in.
The thing out from your story for me, like anyone listening, is just that sense of when you were praying, not really expecting God to do anything, just to hear that in your own words. I didn't really expect God to do something. And then you actually had what was a spiritual, physical encounter. And that story is not that uncommon. And so I suppose the challenge for anyone listening is like, Michelle's pretty ordinary, down-to-earth person. But for her, she had an incredible encounter with God just because she asked. She had enough faith to just put it out there and God responded in a miraculous way. That's wonderful. Thank you for telling the story.
And thanks for coming on, Michelle. I know that in the lead up, it's not something that you always love to do, speaking in front of a lot of people, but we do appreciate your time and your honesty in telling your story. And hopefully people can benefit from your story and this podcast. And we just appreciate you coming on.
Thanks, Reggie. Thanks, Mark.
Thank you.
The Audience of One podcast is hosted by Pastor Mark Edwards and Regan Smith and is produced by the Kew Baptist Church. This episode is recorded and edited by the great Rob Hamlin.